for all intents and purposes here, I'm not concerned about the specifics of your goals. Those are going to change over time. And really, this is more of a milestone focused type of process. So, you know, if you look at page 3 here, kept it real simple. You know, if your goals are to increase your profits and joy, minimize your work and stress, let's say that means for you, you want to double the amount of money you're making, you want to double the amount of time that you are happy when you're doing the work that's in your business. You would like to spend less time doing that work, maybe half of that time, and ultimately when you're spending less time on things you don't like, you have more time for things you do. That typically leads to a lower level of stress. So, you know, what we're really talking about here is everybody wants more money and more time so that we can feel better and do the things that we want to do in our lives. So no need to get too hung up on goals yet. It helps to have some at points, but we're all trying to do the same thing. So page 4, and like Art was asking here, you know, what is the foundation of my business or any business? The way I think about it, the way we think about it, is we break that down into 3 categories. We have our commodities, we have our assets, and we have our history. And I've got a little breakdown, an example in the booklet, but if you guys got one of those the stapled together sheets, right? You'll see that there's room for your goals and your foundation on one of them. So don't feel like you have to keep up as we go along, but just know that what is on those pieces of paper, those are just blank versions of some of the things you'll find in the booklet. And if they're helpful to you to have them to scribble on while you're thinking about how this applies to your business, you can do it now, you can take them home, whatever works. Like I said, I'll get everybody digital copies so that you can print those off, do whatever you want with them if you do find them helpful. And when that email goes out, Doug, I'd love to include the business planning canvas with that too. And so we'll make sure you get all the resources that you have and that we're talking about today. But you know, if you're looking at this and saying, okay, well, what is my foundation? Really, we're talking about the things that you sell, right? If you're currently selling coffee by the pound, right? You know, you're selling ground coffee and you're selling some cups too, right? You're selling like cold brew and cup, like at the farmer's market, right? Direct to consumer kind of stuff. So, you know, for somebody like Todd, what he's selling is he's selling packaged coffee and he's selling cups of coffee. You know, what else could someone like Todd be selling? Great question. Some people, that answer might be scones, for example. You know, something nice and easy. What goes with coffee? You know, it's not something Todd's doing yet, but it's something Todd's been thinking about, right? Another thing Todd might be thinking about is membership. Again, my mind goes there for 2 reasons. One, it's because it's the world I live and breathe in. 2, it could help Todd because he has the kind of business that maybe fits that model the best of anyone here. And really it's 3 reasons. It's again because, you know, reliable recurring revenue, there is no more valuable asset to a business than that. If you know what sort of money is supposed to be coming in next month already and anything you earn on top of that is gravy, you're in an entirely different position than if you were just keeping your fingers crossed hoping that February was as good as January, which was worse than December. You know,
It's really nice to wake up to orders.
Amen. Right? Yeah. It's even nicer to wake up to deposits.
Oh, come on now. Come on now.
Right. So that, you know, for a lot of people, especially people like us who these are all owners and founders of their business here. So, you know, like if we don't develop some sort of reliable recurring revenue system, we're all going to be biting our nails wondering what our paycheck looks like every month, which is no fun. So, you know, we think about what we're currently selling, we think about what we could be selling, and we think about the most advantageous versions of those things. You know, you may have a lot of things for sale for example, but really what you want to be focused on are things that are high margin, things that are easy to deliver, and things that are popular. If you focus on those sorts of things, then you're setting yourself up for success already. If you decide, oh yeah, I want to, double the profit of my business, this is my most expensive product, so that would be the easiest way to get there. I just sell, X amount of these things. Is that popular? Is that easy for you to deliver? I don't know. Do you actually make any margin on that? Like, it'd be easy to drive top line revenue. You can sell an expensive product at a low margin to drive your top line, but we're talking about bottom line here. Like, this is take home for us. So, when you're thinking about your commodities, stuff that's easy to deliver, stuff that's high margin, stuff that's popular, that's always going to make for an easier process. I know a lot of people maybe don't have a huge variety of products, but do think about what you're selling and its effective popularity and margin and deliverability, because you may realize that, oh man, I could shift a little bit here, and this might be more of a downhill process than an uphill process. So once we've sort of settled on what our commodities are, we want to talk about assets. Think about assets. Assets is everything from cash and receivables. That can be just cash flow, what you got coming in. That could be money in the bank. Maybe you got some savings. Maybe you've got some invoices out there or whatever, but that's all liquid stuff that you could potentially work with. Inventory, any coffee you're sitting on that you might sell, any of these products you've got in stock. Your existing customers. Customers are a huge asset. If you have somebody who's buying product A from you, then they're an easy person to turn to and say, would you be interested in product B or in version A.2, that is bigger and better. And so these customers are really valuable. So are ways to contact those customers. So if you've got mailing lists, physical or email mailing lists, those are really important things to have. Those are really important things for people like Doug and me to know if you come to us asking for help, because these are all potential leverage points. So if you've got followers on social media, if you've got any intellectual property or content, that can be your website, that can be a sales funnel, brochures, marketing material, anything you got, that's great stuff to have. Your team and any partners you've got, be people working for you, people working with you, people who have their own businesses that can help connect you to their assets. All right, those are all valuable things to us that we can potentially leverage. And then you've got things like your education, your skills and experience. Maybe you got a business degree, maybe you've been in business for a while. Maybe your schedule's pretty flexible because you're at the top of your business and you got a couple people working for you, so you've got some time. Or maybe you're doing everything in your business and your team is sitting around twiddling their thumbs. Well, they've got some time. Those are assets we can leverage here. Same thing if you got any real estate, if you got any facilities, if you got any equipment, any of these things that you already have as part of your business is a potential leverage point. Really, the most valuable thing though when it comes to growth is people, right? If you've got a customer base, if you've got a list of leads, people who are interested in what you're selling, those are easy assets to leverage. The way you leverage them, that's when some of those other assets can come into play. But the other thing we want to know about your personal history. So if you've had any successes, yeah, I've been going to the farmer's market and been killing it. I sell, $1,000 worth of coffee every time I go. Awesome. Really important stuff to know. And learning experiences you have, that's fancy for failures, which is fancy for learning experiences. We want to make sure that anything that we already know, that we don't have to teach ourselves that lesson again the hard way. And we also want to think about, like, maybe there's a reason that didn't work. Maybe there's a simple solution. And so we can kind of keep that in mind as we move forward too. And then we want to think about our debts and our obligations. So, really what's coming out of your pocket every month. Maybe you got a loan, maybe you got employees, you got overhead, you got this or that. It could be anything, but what do you gotta make sure is taken care of before you can be focused on anything else? Again, just important for people like me to know as a starting point, because if I'm gonna try and help you, really the best thing I can do for you is figure out how to help you leverage your assets. So gotta figure out what moving on, once we've established that opportunity, or rather, once we've established that foundation, we're gonna start looking at ways we can, again, leverage those assets to ultimately sell more of those commodities, right? We're looking to sell more of the things that are easy for us to sell, that make us good money, and we're maybe looking to introduce more of those things, So what are we currently selling? What else could we be selling? These are gonna inform the kind of opportunities that we're considering. So if you look at the example in the booklet, we're again talking about our buddy Matt Moore at the brewery. Like I said earlier, he was selling food and drinks when we met him. He had some decent revenue. He had supplies. He had 20,000 customers. He didn't have a list, but they were coming in on a regular basis to his restaurant locations. So if you got 100 to 200 people a day coming into your location, that's an opportunity to leverage right there. And so that was a big one that stood out when we went through this method with him. He also had 10,000 Facebook followers to start. That didn't hurt. He had a website and a social media presence, but he wasn't really doing anything with them. He had some presence in the retail world. He'd been in business for 5 years, which was really there's a difference between people who have owned business for 5 years and people who were just getting started, and that's that a lot of people have learned a lot of things the hard way, but at the same time, they're also sometimes set in their ways. Anita, you're in a unique position because you're probably open to anything, right? Which is great.
Was that big enough?
Yeah, a lot of people end up in the box, Jason here is a software engineer. The unique challenge engineers have is to make things work within a box without confining their thinking to that box. It's easy for people like business owners who are engineering the success of their business to end up stuck in that box. It can be a double-edged sword. Experience is great, but flexibility is important. And ultimately, he was experienced, but he was also flexible, not only in his willingness to work with us, but in his schedule. And they had 2 restaurants and a microbrewery going when we met them. They had a van they could drive some beer around in. So all good stuff to know going into that project. So we started looking at opportunities for him to grow that business. And so we went down the top of page 5 here in the booklet and said, okay, these opportunities consist of what? Well, it's really the 5 W's and H kind of thing, right? Your opportunities can be defined by the who, what, where, when, why, how kind of thing. So not in that order necessarily, but if you look at that phase 2 opportunities, right, your offer and your audience are the first 2 components. So what you're really asking yourself is, you're going to sell more of what to who, right? Your offer is the what, your audience is the who. So you're going to say, do this to get that, and you're going to say that to a certain demographic of people, like Charmaine was talking about here. If business is like fishing, you got to be fishing in a pond that's full of the kind of fish you want to catch. If you're fishing for sharks in a creek full of minnows, you're going to be disappointed at the end of the day, every time. So knowing who you're looking for is really important, because it not only informs how you're going to present your offer, but it also informs where you're going to find these people. So you're going to sell who, you're going to sell what to who, and then down to your traffic source and your conversion, that's saying where and how, right? So your traffic source is the pond that we're talking about, right? Where is your audience hanging out? What pond are those people swimming in? Ultimately, your traffic source is going to be the pond that you think is best stocked with the fish that you're fishing for. And there's some really cool tools like Facebook's Ads Manager, where you can look and ask Facebook, hey, how many people that use your platform have these interests and meet these demographics? I can tell you how many people in any age group of any gender in any location have what interests, and that's all based on behavioral data that Facebook collects for us and makes available for free. So, a lot of times social media is a great place to start, even just from a development standpoint, because it can tell you a lot about your audience. everybody that from a demographic standpoint is represented on Facebook, and the number that's represented there is at least proportionally pretty accurate to the number of people just in existence. So, you know, once we figured out where we're going to sell whatever it is we're selling to these people, we want to figure out how, right? That's your funnel system, that's your point of sale, that's the process we were talking about, saying, okay, we're going to run an ad on Facebook, we're going to send them to the website, and they're going to make the purchase online, right? Funnels can be different depending on how yours is set up, but we'll get into all that. You know, the next couple of things, the components of any opportunity are the impact and the timeline, right? That's when and why, right? So the impact being your why, like that's the whole reason you're doing this in the first place, is because you think that it is going to drive you closer to your goals, right? And in this case, it means it's gonna make you richer and happier. There are ways to sort of quantify that, and I want to talk about that here in just a second, but ultimately, in order to quantify anything, we have to have some sort of timeline along which we're measuring it, you know, and that's just so we can determine whether it's successful or not. So, you know, a timeline, a good place to start is always like 3 months or 1 year, you know, a quarter or a year, whatever, when you're looking at an opportunity. Think about the kind of results it can potentially generate for you over the course of a quarter or a year. And when you think about that little equation on the impact line, we call it CFOMP, C-F-O-M-P. Does anybody know what that means?
I forgot. You told me once.
Jason has.
I can't remember.
Oh, Jason, come on now.
Jason hasn't
How'd you
forgotten.
forget?
Jason builds dashboards around this whole concept.
Yeah, I can't even remember anything. Sorry.
Well, anyway.
I like the acronym.
Right, so CFOMP is an equation you can use to calculate the profitability of any business, and you can use it to measure the impact of any growth or any change on that business. And so CFOMP stands for customers times frequency times order value times margin, and that equals profit. And what's really cool is that you don't have to know what all of those things are inside your business in order to use that as a way of quantifying the results that you want to have. When I say quantify, I just mean put a number to, right? So I know that if the number of customers I have times their frequency, which is the number of times they come in during any given period, times their order value, which is the amount they spend, times the margin you make on whatever you're selling, that equals your profit every time. Doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, right? So if you start just saying, okay, my baseline for my CFOMP equation is all ones, right? I have X number of customers, they come in X number of times, they spend X amount of money, I make whatever percentage I make, right? If you just start with a 1 as your foundation, then you're saying 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 equals 1, right? The existing state of your business produces the amount of profit your business is currently making, right? So any changes that occur to how you're doing business, the profitability of that is going to be reflected in this equation. So let's go ahead and jump down to this example here, and I'll explain what that means, right? Because we're going through looking at opportunities for Martin City Brewing Company, right? And he's got lots of different opportunities ahead of him. He could sell more retail beer, he could open an event space, he could do all kinds of stuff. But again, we landed on starting a membership program because that was the way we thought we could impact this equation the most, right? And so we went down the list and said, okay, our offer is going to be join the club to get benefits. We're not going to overthink it yet, but that's what it's going to be, right? And our audience is local beer and pizza lovers, and they hang out in 2 places, right? They come to my restaurants already, and they hang out on Facebook. I know those are 2 places that ultimately sell a membership program. The conversion mechanism, right? We're talking about running ads and then sending these people to a website and then getting them to come back to the physical location, right? So maybe they're in the restaurant and they see a poster on the wall, right? Maybe they're on Facebook and they see an ad in their news feed. Either way, they're gonna end up on the brewery's website giving their name and email address and phone number, and they're gonna become a member of this club. And once they're there and they become a member, now they've got some offers, some things that they can come in back to the restaurant and say, hey, I'm in the club, you guys owe me a free chicken wing, I'm here to collect. And just like we said, that free order of chicken wings or whatever it might be is not the only thing that these people spend money on. So we, when we were looking at this opportunity, saying, okay, we think this is the best, but why do we think it's the best? Well, the reason we thought it was the best is because we looked at that CFOMP equation, and we said, okay, if our starting point is 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 equals 1, right? What kind of impact are we hoping that this membership program can have on our business and on our bottom line? So we said, okay, introducing and advertising this program, we think it has the potential to drive up our number of customers by 25%, right? We've got 20,000 customers already. We think that advertising something like this over a year's time will help us bring 5,000 new customers into the fold. We know that that's a possibility because we looked on Facebook at the number of beer and pizza lovers in our area, and there are 200,000 of them. So for us to serve 25,000 of them, that would be 1/8 of the population in my immediate area. You know, a small town like that, a relatively small town, that's not an unrealistic milestone for them. And what kind of impact do we think it would have on frequency? Well, we thought that if we gave people a reason to come back to the business, right, they've got these membership benefits now, that's going to increase the average number of visits from 1 per month to 2 per month, right? Or it's at least going to double that number, whatever that average is. So when you look at the example, that's where we get that 1.25, that's the number of customers, and 2, that's the frequency, right? We're not expecting this program to drive up order values, right? We, if anything, like people are saving money on this, right? So we're gonna leave that order value, that third number, as a 1. But we're gonna think about our margin, right? The benefits that we're offering these people. And so if, for example, what you're offering as far as a discount is concerned, or as far as a bonus is concerned, when these members come in, that's gonna impact your margin. And the math we did said that's gonna take 20% off of it, right? That's gonna move it from a 1 to a 0.8, right? But what's cool is that when I look at that, I say, okay, well, even though my margin is now 80% of what it was, my order values are still right there where they were. My number of customers has increased to 1.25, 25%, and I've doubled my average customer's frequency. So when you multiply those numbers together, that doesn't give you a 1 anymore, that gives you a 2. And what that means is you're making twice as much profit as you were before. Now, you're serving what looks like additional 25% of people, and they're coming in twice as frequently. So there's some work involved, don't get me wrong. But you've effectively doubled your bottom line by, if rather, you can hit those milestones. So we use that equation to, again, attach a number to what we think is a realistic milestone for a system we're developing to pursue this opportunity. And for Martin City, as an example, we thought, you know, in a year's time, we can bring on 5,000 members to their club, and we can double their bottom line, what they're taking home in a year's time. And so how are we gonna do that, right? We realized that's what we wanna do. We don't need to build an event space. We don't need to sell more retail beer. We're starting this membership program. It is the shortest, fastest, easiest path to success in our minds. So next phase, if you turn the page, is that phase 3, right? That's creation. And that's where we get into actually building a system that's going to help us do that. And so, you know, the first part is, what are the components of the system? Well, these components have a purpose, right? and their purpose is to take people from where they are to where you want them to be. And that AIDA, the thing you see there on the page, that is like an age-old, tried and true marketing tool that people use to think about creating systems like this, right? Because to get someone from where they are to where you want them to be, you gotta make them aware that that's a possibility. They've gotta express some sort of interest in it. They have to show that they legitimately want to do it, and then they have to take that action, right? So awareness, interest, desire, action, that is the framework we use to put together any of these sales systems, these growth systems. And the things that we want to be focused on, the metrics rather, the data, right? Those are our key performance indicators, right? They're going to tell us what sort of action we want to be measuring. And the conversion rate is going to be the percentage of people that take that action through each step of the process. And what we're going to do, once we've created this, we'll be able to move on to phase 4, which is that understanding phase. And that's where we take this information we've got, we look at our key performance indicators, we review those conversion rates, and then we do an experiment, right? I actually went to University of Missouri, Kansas City, and got a degree in biology and chemistry. So I'm no stranger to science experiments, but I don't use my degree the same way that most of my colleagues did, right? I applied a scientific method to marketing. Has everybody here done a science experiment before?
Yeah.
Right?
Years ago.
Been a while.
Yeah.
Been a while.
Years.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Right, so we're all scientists
I think all
here.
parents.
Amen. So, just to refresh everybody, we are all scientists here. If you are in business, you are utilizing the scientific method day in and day out, whether you know it or not, right? But you may not know what that method is. It sounds fancy, it's really simple. Hypothesize, experiment, analyze, repeat, right? And so the hypothesis, if you remember your 8th grade science class, exactly 6th grade science class, right? Yes, that's your educated guess, right? It's what you think.
First operation too.
A change, how you think that's going to impact what you do, right? So you say, okay, well, I've got my ad running, it's driving people to my website, they're buying my coffee, but I think that if I put some beautiful woman in the image as opposed to my ugly face and a sack of coffee, I'm talking about mine, not yours. Right. I think that people will more likely click my ad and buy from me if I put a beautiful woman in the ad rather than me. So that's my hypothesis. The experiment is to do exactly that. I'm going to run a different ad. I'm going to keep everything else the same. Because in science, that's a really important thing to do. You have to control your variables. So one change at a time. Otherwise, you don't know if the change actually had the desired effect. Right? And then you analyze, right? So you say, I'm going to put this woman in the ad. I've run the ad. I'm going to let it go for 30 days. And now I'm looking at the data. I'm analyzing it. And I'm saying, did this have the impact that I hypothesized it would? And turns out my educated guess was correct. I have increased my conversion rate. Now, I used to show this ad to 1,000 people and 100 of them clicked on it. Now I show it to 1,000 people and 200 of them click on it. That's a 10% increase, right? 10% to 20%. You've doubled your conversion rate just by coming up with some theoretically cool idea and proving that it actually worked. So the process at this point is to just do that over and over again. Oh, is it getting cold?
The air conditioning one.
Well, you can wrap yourself in
That's
that.
okay. Tablecloth.
That's only Chicago now.
Oh, no.
No, but I know how it is out in the,
So the purpose as we go through the whole,
Chicago.
we like Chicago.
Hills, Connecticut.
And it is nice to meet the AC on again, I will say. I've been cold the last few days. But, so as we go through the whole optimization process, right, where we're trying to get our system to work as well as we possibly can, that's just using the scientific method over and over again. If we set it up as a simple AIDA system, then it's real easy to use that method to say, okay, is it broken here, here, or here? Okay, this is where we decided it's potentially broken. Let's try this fix, see if that works. Okay, that didn't work as well as we thought it might. What if we tried this fix? Oh, that worked even better than we thought. Perfect. So it's a way of using data to make informed decisions about the changes and adaptations you need to make in your business. So if you look at that example funnel system, it breaks down each stage of this AIDA blueprint and then some. There are a couple things added to the bottom that we'll continue on to, but really if you just focus on that AIDA at the top and where it says KPI 1, 2, and 3, right? Those are really the foundation of any system. This other stuff below it is an expansion on it. But when you think about it from an overarching standpoint, right? What is Martin City Brewing Company's strategy and how does it look like? What does it look like in blueprint form? Well, we know that to make people aware of this, we're going to create some print advertising and we're going to make posts on social media, right? And so the way that we know that the people who are aware of it are actually interested in it is by them clicking on that ad or scanning that little code on the poster, right? If we measure clicks and we measure scans, then we know when we circle back around and look at our analysis of this, we look at our metrics, we can say, okay, that's the number we're starting from. That's the number that these changes we think we need to make are supposed to impact. So we know they've seen our ad, they've clicked on it, or they've scanned the code, we know they're interested, right? And now they're on our website, and we need them to provide their name and email and phone number to join the club. And most importantly, we want them to give us permission to continue to communicate with them. Because at this point, they may have never spent any money with us, but if we have them on a list, then we can continue to nurture that relationship. A couple people have talked about lists already being valuable, but that's a huge one. And we know that if they give us their information and they join the club, they have a desire for whatever it is we're offering, right? We said join the club to get benefits, right? And so they joined the club, they must want the benefits, and now they've got them. So the last thing we need them to do is actually take that action, right? They want to come in and get this free slice of pizza we're giving them, but we need them to actually do that. So that's the third thing we're gonna measure, right? Is how many people actually come to our location and use those membership benefits to redeem an offer, right? So if you're Martin City, that's your system, and those are the 3 key performance indicators that you want to be focused on, right? So if you're saying, okay, tons of people are clicking the ad or scanning the poster, but then they get to the join the club page and nobody's joining the club, well, maybe the technology's broken. That could be part of it, right? The user experience is a lot of times an area of focus that can use a lot of help, especially when the people who have put together your technology don't know anything about it, because you did it yourself, and maybe you're a videographer, but you don't build websites, right? Maybe you're a tax accountant and you don't build websites, you know. The user experience, as we all know, because we're all on our phones and our computers day in and day out, clicking buttons and reading screens and whatever else, you know when you've hit a clunky user experience and you don't want to do it anymore, right? And you give up on signing up for that cool beer club you were going to join because it was just a pain. So the user experience is one place that we can consider ironing something out, right? The other most likely place that's going to need some massaging in all this is your offer, right? And so to make something irresistible to the people it's for, there are really 4 components of value to consider. And the way that you structure that and the way you present it can make a big difference in whether or not people say yes to it, right? Art can offer me tax services all day long, but if he doesn't say it to me in a way that I know I'm going to get the value I'm looking for out of it, then I'm probably not going to say yes to it. So,
And if you don't trust them, trust goes a long way when it comes to consumer.
absolutely, right. And so we call things like that barrier to entry, right? So if the user experience isn't there, if there's a lack of trust, And if your offer doesn't resonate, like those three things are definitely gonna create a bottleneck in your system. So don't be sleazeball, right? Like, be the most trustworthy person you possibly can, and know that like that's a really important part of starting a relationship. Like, you know, if I'm gonna start a relationship with anybody, I'm not well served to try and take advantage of them, you know, or to talk to them like I want to take advantage of them. So, you know, it's easy to be really salesy. What you got, Dr. Benson?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, I think this is an excellent outline. I love the outline that you have here.
Thank you.
But I was just wondering, I have worked with people with different skills
Sure.
level. And like if someone wants to come to you that's probably not very well, you know, very little knowledge in
Sure.
technology. And I'm not talking about older people,
Right.
okay? People who maybe don't understand the language.
Mm-hmm.
Do you sit down with them and give them a training program, or do you walk through with them in a program such as this? What do you do with your different type of client skills and abilities?
Sure. So, you know, everybody's a little bit different, and so what they need to know and understand about technology is a little bit different. You know, when it comes to really an expertise, you know, I'm an expert in utilizing certain technologies for certain purposes. I'm not an end-all be-all expert when it comes to technology, and I'm not a dictionary. But I can absolutely help you develop an understanding of the technology that applies to your industry generally. And there's no reason for any of this to be over anybody's head. If at any point I say something that doesn't make sense, like, please let me know. I've been doing this for a long time. I don't always know when I'm treating you like a child and treating you like an expert. You know, like, so if anybody has questions about those sorts of things along the way, absolutely ask them. My general concession, right, is to connect people who need things beyond my expertise to real experts. That's where I learned most of what I know. But the FOCUS method, theoretically, right, we're talking about clicks and scans and signups online, but this doesn't have to be thought of as a technical system, right? This could just as easily be, okay, awareness, I'm gonna go up to the farmer's market and set up a table. Interest is the number of people who come up to my table and ask for a sample. Desire is the number of people who answer yes when they have a sample and they say that they enjoyed it. And action is the number of people who actually buy coffee from me, right? No technology involved in that at all whatsoever, but still KPIs that you can measure along the way and a system that you can optimize to make work better. And so as deep into the weeds as we need to get to with the technology, we absolutely can. At the end of the day, this stuff is getting easier for non-technical people to use day in and day out. I wrote a press release with a robot 2 weeks ago. You know, Jason here has done a lot of experiments with some of these AI bots and what they're able to produce. And you know, that's the kind of thing that I know enough to talk about you know, in a way that would probably be helpful, but I'm by no means an expert. And so, you know, the technology is becoming easier and more widely utilized. It's also changing, just a little bit.
Yeah.
And
And the AI stuff
AI is wild.
Yeah.
I was doing a blog post and I typed in brewing coffee and it made an article on how to brew coffee.
Oh,
Artificial intelligence.
the robot, there's no name for a robot?
It's like thinking.
So
It'll
we'll talk about that,
basically overdevelop itself. So the more you are in contact with it, the more it picks up on what you do, what
Like
you.
Alexa's got
Alexa
AI.
is AI, but they're trying to make an actual person type.
They not trying, they got them.
Right. So they don't look like the big metal bots like you used to see in old movies. They actually look like us.
Yeah, you actually can sell your facial features to be one.
It's like you can volunteer your DNA your looks, your
Yeah.
characteristics, your voice, everything.
Yeah.
Volunteer is how
Volunteer.
they
Not
like you to volunteer as
I
a
don't
social
think
study.
I can't stomach another me walking around.
And we talk about robots, really, the idea of a physical robot and a physical twin, that is AI powered, like, believe me, that absolutely exists, and it's a little bit horrifying.
It is.
But what's interesting, and not to get on a tangent here, but the companies who are developing artificial intelligence, which I used to just know AI as Adobe Illustrator, right? It's taken on a new meaning, right?
Wait a minute,
Right.
we're not talking about the same thing.
Right, so all of this,
Josh, can I take a few of your pamphlets for the office?
I got plenty for you, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for hanging out. It's a privilege to meet you, man. Yeah.
Yeah, seeing you around again.
Mr. Gordon, great.
Thank you.
I know, we got,
Space back here in the base.
Oh, what are you trying to say, Mr. Elbert?
yeah.
You saying I need a magnifying glass?
Sometimes
Oh, man.
absolutely.
I thought we were, getting off to a better start. Oh, you're over here.
Easy, it's always
Assuming.
like
Right?
The other part, you see it does this,
What is that?
pin in it,
Absolutely. I
get your
want to,
fingernail in there.
Oh, and this one.
Now that's PR, he's a PR man.